My story with the Jewish Agency starts a long time ago. I think the first contact when I was 3 years old, because my family made Aliyah from Argentina. I was born in Argentina, and we made Aliyah here. I've been working at the Jewish Agency now for 15 years, and I think today was the first day in like a month that I arrived to the office, because I'm going to tell you my personal story, but within all the personal story, I'm also trying to work. It was very confusing to mix both worlds of the struggle that we're going through and trying to work, and that's it. I'll start with showing you a picture. This is the one in the middle is Amos. He's my husband. And these are his siblings. This picture was taken a year ago in September when he celebrated his birthday. It's in our garden. We live in a small city in the center of Israel called Kfar Saba. This is Yair. He's the oldest. He's 45, and my husband has 42 years old, and he's the middle one. And this is Eitan, and he's 37. All of them were born in Argentina as well. We met here. They were born in Argentina. They grew up in a very pro-Israel, Israel-loving house. They went to Jewish day school. They went to a youth movement. And once they graduated from high school, all of them made Aliyah in different and separate times. This picture was a reproduction that was taken by, there's a project of a photographer that she's working as a volunteer at the Missing and Hostage Family Forum in Tel Aviv. So she's doing reproductions of those pictures. So this was taken now in December. The same place, I think no need to explain that much. This is the story of our life since October 7th. I don't know if you can notice that he lost so much weight. That's the story, like no sleeping and trying to push him to eat and at least to go for a walk outside so he can, I don't know, keep his physical health in a way. And this is the struggle. Everyone this morning asked me at the office, are you feeling better? And I asked them why, and they said because there's a conversation about a possible deal, and I told them that we're trying in order to maintain our, I don't know,
sanity.
Yeah, sanity in a way. We're trying in a way to kind of ignore what's going on, because we're hearing so many different things. So until there's not a deal, we're trying to just keep away. This is the famous poster, which I guess you saw all of these. Yair and Eitan. It's funny, but their story is also related to the Jewish Agency. Eitan is the only one who made Aliyah when he was 16, before even graduating from school, because he wanted to finish his high school here. So he came to this Jewish Agency program called Naale. And they lived all together on a campus in a kibbutz in the north of Israel, Gesher, and they lived there, and they had their kind of guides, counselors, and he finished high school, and then he joined the army. Yair made Aliyah after high school. He was 18, he joined the army, and since then, later on their parents came as well, so all the family is living here. Eitan is a non-formal educator. He's been doing different jobs in the past 10-15 years, and everything is around non-formal education. He was a guide and counselor in different other kibbutzim communities around the country, working with teens. He was a shaliach of the Jewish Agency in Peru, in the community there for 2 years. When the war with Ukraine broke, he decided that he wants to work with those kids, so we went to this kind of youth village of the Jewish Agency as well, and he asked to become a guy there. They got him into the job because he had lots of experience. I remember I told him, Eitan, how come you're going to work with Ukrainian kids? You don't speak nor Russian nor Ukraine. And he said, they're running away from a war. They're coming as refugees. They have no parents here. I've been through the same process without the war, of course. I'm going to be there for them. And so we did. And it was an amazing experience for him and for the kids as well. He's a very funny guy. He always enter a room and 5 minutes later, everyone falls in love with him. He's like telling jokes, he sings, he would perform. Is an amazing person. And Yair, after the army, he went back to Argentina for a few years and then he came to Israel. He learned radio production. He had a dream of having many radio programs, but because of the Spanish Hebrew thing, I don't think he ever tried it that seriously. But he would do stand-up shows. He has a different sense of humor than Eitan. He's more like sarcastic. He's the handyman of kibbutz Nir Oz. Kibbutz Nir Oz, have you been to the kibbutzim around?
I've been to Minnesota.
So kibbutz Nir Oz is a very small kibbutz, is literally on the border with Gaza. It's less than 1 mile from the border with Gaza. It's a very small kibbutz if you compare to the other kibbutzim. Let's say Kfar Aza is a kibbutz with 1,000 members. Nir Oz is a kibbutz with 400 members as to October 6th. He joined that kibbutz because many friends that grew up with him at the youth movement in Argentina were members of that kibbutz. In general, there's a strong Argentinian, and not only Argentinian, Latin American community living in those kibbutzim around the Gaza border, just because they came with their groups from the youth movements during the 40s and the 50s, and part of them actually were part of the founders of these kibbutzim. So Yair is the handyman of the kibbutz. When he chose to do that job, first he worked at the dining room, and I asked him if it's not boring working there, and he said that it's the only way you can actually get to meet everyone, because you serve them food every lunch. So you see what they're eating and you're having conversation and then you get to know them better. I think it was like 2 years ago, he switched positions and now he's the handyman of the kibbutz. Many elders are living in that kibbutz, many of them who don't have their kids around because sometimes or many times the second generation is like leaving to the city and maybe a few years later coming back. So he felt like he's not only handyman, he's also kind of taking care of those people and just going around and helping them. He runs the local pub. There's a small pub inside the kibbutz. He runs the local pub. During COVID, he struggled with the fact that people are like locked down inside their houses and they're not coming together. And for him, going to live in a kibbutz is all around community and living together. So he took the small club car, because in those kibbutzim, they move inside the kibbutz. It's like small path, so you don't take the car inside. So they either have small club cars or bicycles. So he took a club car and he put some like drinks from the pub, this huge speaker, and he just went around saying tonight is the mobile pub night. And he would go to all the like members of the kibbutz. He would knock on their doors. He would make them, force them, leave the home and just have a drink outside within social distance and everything. He's a very much community person. He's also in charge for many years of the holidays, from Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Pesach. His favorite one is Purim. So he would, every year they'll have like this conversation before and they will choose a theme for the customs. And it's a big thing. Community, it's a big thing for him. One last thing I'll tell you about them before we'll start talking about October 7th is that I have 2 kids. Gali, she's 11, and Ariel is 8. And for me, the strongest thing about them, except for them being amazing people, is that they're amazing uncles to my kids. I do have 2 brothers, but they're married and they have kids. So once I had my kids, they're like, okay, you know. But when you have those uncles who are still single and they don't have kids of their own. At least this is from my experience. So they're so dedicated and devoted, and they would come like every weekend and play with them. Yair would build special wooden toys for them. All our garden is filled of those wooden toys that he builds for them. And Eitan would always take them to watch movies and to shop for all the candies that I never allowed them. And they would just like play and fool around and dance together. Very, very dedicated uncles, and this is part of the story as well. It's not only, I always say that there are so many layers to the story. It's not just what happened in Israel on October 7th and the war that started that day. It's not only the hostages, and it's not only the fallen soldiers and their families. I believe and I see that all the Israeli society is going through some kind of trauma and feeling the loss, even though not everyone knows someone directly, although in Israel everyone knows someone directly. But part of those layers is, for me at least, is the daily conversation with my kids about the situation. And the latest example I can tell you is that this morning my daughter woke up and the first question she does is there a deal already? And it's not only today, because they are negotiating every morning since October, well, not since October 7th, since the previous hostage deal. This is her first question. And as a mother, it's maybe the worst part of the day, having to say, no, unfortunately, no. And for her, as an 11 years old girl, she's having real problems understanding how come they took people and they're not bringing them back. I came back on Friday from the United States. I went to Washington, D.C. and to Texas to meet with senators, lawmakers, many people as part of the efforts of the Family Forum to push and leverage and do everything we can so the government of the US is with us in this effort. I also met the Prime Minister of Qatar last week on a Monday, exactly a week ago in Washington, D.C. And when I told my daughter that I'm going to the United States, she was so upset. And she said, Mom, it's not enough that they took my uncles and everything is in our life is destroyed. These were her words. Now you also have to go for a week and we won't have you with us. And then she asked, isn't it the tafkid?
The job, the role.
Isn't it the job of the government to do it? And those are, she's young, but those are real and very complex questions that I have, and I think we as a society, we have to deal with. So I'll go back to October 7th. As I told you, Yair lives in the kibbutz and Eitan lives in Kfar Saba, in the same city where I live, but he was visiting his brother for that weekend. Actually, it was between jobs, so we took kind of like a few days off. They also invited my husband to join them, but we had other programs with the kids, so it was just the two of them in that apartment. And on 6:30 in the morning, we heard a siren. Now, I don't know how many conversations you had with Israelis, but on one hand, it's not so strange to have a siren. Where I live, it's not happening very often. So it was strange, but we had rockets and missiles in the past. So we have like this thing where we know that my husband takes Gali and I go and take Ariel and we run to the safe room. We close the door, and after closing the door, the first thing we do is take the phone and call Yair, which, by the way, Yair would always laugh that we always call him when we know that there's a rocket or missiles attack, and he says that his community, they live so close to the border that most of the time it's not a danger because all the rockets are just passing from going through. So we call him and he's not answering the phone. He kind of hangs and we understand that something is happening. But then he texted us saying, we're in the safe room, everything's okay. Okay, where I live, we have to stay for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, since there was not another siren, we entered back home. Since it was a Saturday, I had the program of sleeping till late this day. So I kind of try to go back to bed. I take my phone, I open the news app, and I suddenly see strange things I've never seen before. We see the people from the news talking about an invasion. We see pictures of those Toyota pickup cars full of terrorists. We see the path, we see the garden inside the kibbutz, and we know the place. We've been there so many times, and we see the same place we know with like terrorists going around, and they're shooting all over, and they're burning houses. And I think at first we were like, Maze? I mean, it must be a mistake. I don't know. We had really hard time assimilating, understanding what we're seeing. We call them, they don't answer once again, and they're texting, we're in the same place, everything's okay. Till now, I don't know if they didn't talk about the fact that they have terrorists outside their houses because they didn't want to worry us. I don't know, they never mentioned that fact. It was for an hour like this. We've been watching horrible things going on, super worried, texting them. They're saying they cannot pick up the phone, but they're texting and saying, same place, everything's okay. Last message we got from them was at 7:30 a.m. It was only an hour. And then we stopped getting answers. Of course, we texted, we called, everything, and they just didn't answer. And then my husband says, you know what, I'm taking the car, I'm driving them there. And of course, I stopped him and I said, don't do it. I mean, look at the TV. It's a danger. There's a war over there, which is crazy because I think on a Saturday morning is 1 hour drive from my house. And he said, but they're not picking the phone. Something had happened to them. I have to go there. They're just the three of them. No more siblings. And I told him, you know what? If you'll go, so your life is going to be at risk, at danger. I mean, we're in this problem already. We don't know what's going on with them. No need to add more. And then he said, okay. I called my brother and I told him that he should come and take my kids because we were kind of like hiding the news and trying not to show them what's going on because they're young. So we took the kids and it was just the two of us. For the rest of the day trying to call them, I'm the optimistic person in the house, so I was like, don't worry, I guess they ran out of battery, or we saw how they're shooting the electricity down in all the kibbutzim, so I said maybe, I don't know, the signal, I don't know, something had happened, so don't worry, in a few minutes they'll call us back, which they didn't. And then the second part was trying to call all the other friends we have in the same kibbutz. A very good friend of Yair, I don't know if all of you had visited a kibbutz, but the old houses of the kibbutz are like shurot, like rows. So he lives in a row, and there's a small garden, and then another row, and the house exactly in front is Chaim, which is his best friend. So we're calling Chaim, and Chaim is saying, I don't know, because I'm in the safe room, and the safe room is exactly in the middle of the house, so you cannot look like towards the back of the house where Yair's home is. And he's telling us that there are terrorists as we speak inside his home. So we just don't know. And we try to call another friend and another friend. And for many hours kind of calling all the friends until one of the friends, which is one of their best friend, told us, you know what, stop calling me. I have terrorists inside my house. I'm holding the door so they won't take me, my wife, and my 3 kids. I have no clue where your brothers are. And I think it was like, I don't know, maybe the first time where we kind of understand what's going on. The day went by, and at 6:30, the army arrived to the kibbutz. The invasion started 12 hours before. When the army arrives to the kibbutz, there are no terrorists inside the kibbutz. They finished their job at around 3:30. There were, according to the army and the security cameras, around 1,000 terrorists entered the kibbutz that day, among them women and kids. And it's important to say, and in the security cameras, you see those kids with weapons and uniform. I mean, not just kids who joined. And in the kibbutz, they have this small group of first responders that I guess there are no more than 15 in these groups. And because nothing like this had ever happened before, so all their weapons of the first responders are in a specific place, which the terrorists knew where the weapons are. They had maps. They found on their bodies, they had maps of all the places, and not only in Nir Oz, in all the kibbutzim, they found maps of where is the house of the man who's in charge of the security, the first responder group, where are the weapons, where exactly they knew everything.
Also, if there were any people of importance in the kibbutzim, like the mayor or anyone who had a role in the army.
Right. So they would go first to look for them. So 1,000 people enter a kibbutz of 400. Most of them have no weapons. Many kids in those kibbutzim, in those communities. Of course, they had no chance. So at 3:30, they leave the kibbutz, and then there's a second wave of people from Gaza. I would say civilians, because I don't believe they're innocent civilians, who just came to steal everything. And you see in the cameras how they enter the place. This kibbutz, they have all the fields around. It's a big part of their economical business. They have lots of agriculture. They do mostly, I think most of the potatoes in Israel and the potatoes they send to Europe is from that kibbutz. They have avocado. They have lots of field of peanuts. And they have a big industry factory
for paint.
Yeah, for paint for houses. Very famous in Israel.
Like Nir Oz, the factory is Nir Lat.
Yeah. It was among the first thing they burned, because it's right at the entrance of the kibbutz. And all those civilians, they enter, they took all the tractors. You see in the security cameras how they're entering, taking the kids, they're sitting on one tractor, they're trying the other one. They had 7, I think, tractors, which my kids would enjoy when they would go there, because our friend is in charge of all the camps. So they took the tractors, they took shoes, they took things from the fridge, they took the small bimbas,
like little tricycle cars for infants, for toddlers.
You see how they're coming with their bicycle, and they just put.
And they're coming into homes that, in some cases, these are the same homes where people were already murdered or wounded or taken hostage. In some cases, it's homes where the family is still holding on to the shelter door. So they came in and they walked over the blood of innocent civilians and stole what they could.
And in many cases, and specifically in this kibbutz, part of those civilians actually took hostages. And there's a story of Shani Gor, and she's taking hostage. She said that she was holding the door. She was by herself. And this kid who was 14 or 15 years old is opening the door with a knife, taking her out. And then his father is coming with a bigger knife. They take her in her own car into Gaza. And then she says that they arrive to this place, and she see how the man is having a discussion with another man. They sold her. They kidnapped her, and then they sold her to Hamas. He got money for kidnapping Shani. So it's at 6:30 the army arrives, and then they started going house by house. Unfortunately, the numbers in Nir Oz are terrible. Out of 400 people in that kibbutz on that day, 100 did not survive. 75 were taken hostage, and 25 were murdered. Later on, we discovered that the numbers are a bit different, because part of those 75, they took the bodies, they killed them and then took the bodies, and part of them, we believed that they were taking hostage, but then they found their ashes later on, because it was very hard to find they just burned most of the kibbutz. So 1 out of 4 is a victim. I mean, all the kibbutz was victim. So they started going house by house, and they're taking all the people out of the safe rooms into a small place in the kibbutz where there's army around, because there were still terrorists in all the region. Okay, the kibbutz nearby, they had terrorists for 72 hours. I mean, so they secured this place and they just brought family by family. And our friend is sitting in this place. It was the kindergarten, and he describes how he's looking at the entrance door, waiting to see who's coming next. And by seeing who's coming next, in a way, they're understanding who's not coming, because they know in those rows who's living. So if they just brought this family, the next family should be that family. And if this family is not coming, so what happened to them? And at 8:30, our friend asked the officer to go to Yair's home to see what happened. And he said, we brought everyone who's still alive. So if he's not here, he's not alive. And our friend says, cannot be. Can I go with you? Because they didn't want to let him go by himself. So he went to the house and he calls us from the house. It was not him because he could not speak, but it was the officer. He says, we're standing in Yair's home and they're not here. And I think I can't remember exactly, but I think I was very like, okay, they're not here. Maybe they went somewhere else. Did you check all the public shelters around the kibbutz? Did you? And I kind of started giving him instructions of where to look for them, because I'm the optimistic person in the house. And he says, you don't understand. They're not here. I don't think we understood it by now, but we try. So this was like the first time we know what, in a way, had happened, which for us, it was like a huge struggle to understand. I don't know if you can see, both of them are kind of big. You don't disappear all of a sudden. So days went by. I can't remember exactly what happened every day, but there were so many unidentified bodies. And the field, the potato field, which is like the kibbutz, then there's the field, and then it's the border with Gaza. And the field was filled with bodies, and we knew that from our friends. So my husband was sure that they killed them, and they just didn't identify the bodies yet. And I was sure, I don't know why, that no, they're alive and they were taking hostages. Because their house is among the 5 or 6 houses that were not burned. Most of them were either burned completely or burned to some extent. Their house is not burned at all. We've been told that there were no signs of struggle. There are some holes from the bullets on the door of the security room, but there was not blood on the floor. So we kind of tried to do the math or put all those small pieces together, and I thought that they were taking hostages because they were talking about so many hostages. My husband says, forget it. They're not women. They're not kids. They're huge. They're not going to take them. It's like, and it was for many, many weeks that we had no clue what happened to them. And since we needed to know something, so we started going over those horrible videos that the Hamas terrorists had put online. And it was horrible, and it was super tough, and it was not only looking at the videos, it was looking into every detail. So if there's sorry for the description, but if there's a big body on the back, so we would stop and take a screenshot and have it sent to some friends that would go over all those programs of security and trying to identify faces. It was a horrible time. In the same time, we had to tell something to our kids. So after 2 days that they spent in my brother's house, we brought them back. There was no school, nothing. Everything was paralyzed in Israel. So we brought them back. And after having a conversation with a psychologist, she explained us how we should confront them and tell them the story. So we told them that there's a war and that some terrorists entered the kibbutzim. We didn't go into details to what happened there. And many people are missing. But don't worry, because Israel has the strongest army, and they're going to bring them back. It's going to take a few days because all the southern part in Israel is under a huge mess. But don't worry. Very hard to lie to your kids, because it was actually saying something that it was my wishful thinking. But to be honest, I don't know which part was exactly. So then my daughter said, forget about it, Mom. They're not going to find Eitan, never, ever. And I said, why? And she said, Eitan is the world champion player of hide and seek. So he must be hiding, don't worry. And for me, it was the first time I realized the clash, the encounter between their reality as kids and me as a mom, whose my only dream is to give them, to bring them, to raise them in a safe and secure place. And this is part of the reason that all the family has moved from Argentina, which is not a safe place to be, and especially not for Jews. And by us choosing to live in Israel, every morning when we wake up and we choose this place once again, we want to give them a safe and secure life. We want to give them this world that maybe at the beginning is not 100% real, but when you have small kids, so you kind of explain things differently, and then they grow up and they understand the complexities and they get exposed to many other things, but they're still young. And they still believe that there are good people that are trying to fight against the bad people. So that was the conversation with the kids. Once again, I think because of the trauma, I cannot tell you exactly what happened in each day. We kind of were left in the air. We just didn't know what's going on. We knew where their phones are, and we knew that their phones are in Gaza, but we also knew that the phones of all the kibbutz members who also survived were in Gaza, because they just stole everything. So it was not a proof for us. And people from the army came after I think 10 days or 2 weeks, and they told us that they don't know, that as for now they are under the category of missing people. So we knew that. The first time that we actually knew something was on November 25th, which is a long time after October 7th. It was during the hostage deal, and part of the women who were liberated with the kids are from kibbutz Nir Oz, and they told us that they saw them. And they told us that they saw mostly Eitan, and he was kept with the women and the kids. And that physically he's okay, he's not injured. And that they saw Yair for a few times. He was kept on another place, but after 1 month of being separated, they brought them together and they met. They would not stay in the same place, but every once in a while they would bring them together so they can meet. So both of them are alive as for November 25th and not physically injured. Both of them are taking medications. Yair has pre-diabetes, and Eitan has this something in his skin that he takes medication every day, because otherwise he has kind of those ptsaim wounds that comes out, and it's very difficult, and it can get dirty, and then it can get infected, and then for it, I think 2 or 3 times in the past few years he had to go to the hospital to get stronger medication. So both of them, they're dependent on medication, which we know that they're not getting there, of course, unfortunately. And since then, we don't know anything, and we're depending on the news because we don't have any other source of information. Even though I went to many meetings with the war cabinet and with Benjamin Netanyahu and many other people. They don't give us other information than what you see on the news. Part of it I can understand because of security reasons, and part of this, I think I think us, the families, we need more. And our life, I always say they're the ones who are being hostages, and on November 25th, it was the first time we could actually breathe normally because we knew that they were alive. But on the other hand, those women also told us about the horrible conditions that they're in. So they're in those tunnels and they don't see the sunlight, and everything is humid. So they sleep on like kind of small mattresses, but it's very like humid, almost like
damp.
It's almost wet, and of course they don't have any like proper sanitation conditions, and they're going through starvation, and there's lots of violence. And these women told us not only about physical violence and mental violence that they're going through. They kept on telling them all the time that no one wants you. We saw the news in Israel. We know that they're not even talking about the hostages. They won't get you back. Forget it. You'll live here forever. And this woman, she said, once I was liberated and I saw all the people from the border when she was exchanged until they arrived to the hospital. I don't know if you saw it. It was amazing. It was like a chain. It was 12 or 11 p.m. In the middle of the night, there was a chain of people who just went with the Israeli flag to kind of escort them to. And she said, I was amazed because I've been told that they forgot about us. And all of a sudden I see this, but she has no way to go back and tell them. So they're going through horrible conditions. And she was also talking about sexual violence, not only towards women, also towards men. So on one hand, November 25th was a good day for us, where we actually understood that they're there and they're alive. But on the other hand, we kind of got a better picture of the hell they're going through. And I don't know even how they can do it for 1 minute, not talking about 122 days as for now. My life is around this. My husband is sick. He's not functioning. He lost his job because he's a tour guide. So since they're not tourists in Israel, but even though he cannot work anyway. And my kids are struggling every morning when they wake up. And in the past few weeks, they started having nightmares. So they would wake up in the middle of the night. There was one night that Gali told me, she saw it very clear, that my husband was looking out of the window and then yelling to us, the terrorists are about to enter. So we went and find hiding places. And she woke up when she felt that a terrorist is pointing a gun to her neck. And I'm asking myself, what kind of a reality for an 11 years old girl to live in, you know? And it's, I feel like as a mother, I don't want to say I'm failing because this is not something I did, but you know, when you get married and plan your kids and your life, this is not something you have as part of your program. So I've been to the States twice to try and have those conversations because thank you, because we've been told that the best thing that can happen, there's some studies about how those congressmen and women, after they meet with families, they use it as part of their conversation later on. So the families are doing an amazing diplomatic job. They're going all over. They went to the Vatican, they went to all the governments in Europe. They even flew to Qatar, to Doha, whoever is willing to meet them, the families are going around, which is crazy because we're in the worst situation that one can imagine. We're devastated, but we understand that this is something, telling our story, other people can, but it's not the same impact. We've been going to all the demonstrations around Israel, all the rallies. We marched for 3 or 4 days from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, sleeping outside in tents. One night it was even raining. We're trying to do everything we can. There's an amazing group of volunteers in this forum. Amazing, 2,000 volunteers. It was an organization that started on the day after, on October 8th. And this is a very grassroots organization. this high-tech company gave them a whole building in Tel Aviv. They have teams for diplomacy, teams for social media. They have mental health. They open the gym now because many of those families are just spending the day there. So
volunteers that are cooking for the family.
Right, volunteers who are cooking, taking care of the kids and everything which is needed. And all based on donations because it's not based on the government. This is what we do since then. And we ask ourselves how long we can move on with this. I was trying to make math in my head the other day because I read the conditions of this negotiation that they're talking about. We don't even know if this is like exactly it, but they're talking about 35 hostages, mainly women and elders, and hopefully the kids, that are gonna be released one a day for a ceasefire. So they're not gonna be among the first group. So it's 35 days. And then 7 days where they will be sitting around and negotiating the second part, if there will be a second part. So 35 plus 7, it's 42. And then they're talking about the next categories, which the last one are the people who they killed either on that day or throughout those 122 days. And then one group before are gonna be the soldiers, which they might be counted as soldiers because Hamas is counting all the men that are in the reserve age.
Like a fighting age.
Yeah, fighting age. And in Israel you do reserve, I think, until you're 45. So even this deal, if it's gonna happen, which is amazing because I believe that every life we can save is a whole world, as the Talmud says, it's gonna take for them, I don't know, at least 60 or 70 days more. And to be very honest, I just don't know if they can make it. I mean, for us it's gonna be impossible, but you know what? I have my home, I have food, I'm not being tortured, at least not physically, mentally I am. So this is the situation, and once again, 136. We know that I think almost 30 out of the 136 were murdered. Part of them were murdered on October 7th, and part of them were murdered in the past 4 months. But there are more than 110 people who are still alive, which...
It's about 30 that we understand have been murdered. It's the two soldiers, Dar Goldin and Ron Shaul, that it's speaking again about their bodies, and it's the two people that were taken hostage a few years ago. So yeah. I think that's it. I mean, you were talking about the fact that you're gonna go back to your countries and tell the story, which for us, the families, is very important, and I want to thank you for that. And I also want to add, if I may, a small thing, that when you do it, try to focus on the fact that this is a humanitarian issue. Because I think that especially in Europe, but not only, many people are trying to put this story in a context of something bigger, and they would say that it's because of the ongoing war and the not solved conflict and the right wing and the left wing and all those kind of things, which I believe that the first thing should be separate the two of them. These people in that region were people who believed in peace. They had Palestinians entering every morning from Gaza, because every morning between 20 and 30,000 Palestinians would enter every day to work in Israel. And they would walk around those kibbutzim. By the way, this is how they knew later on those maps and exactly where. And they would never lock their houses. If you go to a kibbutz, the door is always open. And if it's locked, you know that there's a small cabinet on the side, and you open and you see the key. I mean, that's always the deal in those places. And part of the members of this kibbutz
are volunteers who take their cars to the border and wait for people who are coming from Gaza to get medical treatment in Israel because they don't have proper or good oncological therapy for those who are going through cancer treatments and other sicknesses and illnesses. So the people from this kibbutz would actually take the kibbutz cars and just drive them to the hospital, spend the whole day with them, bring them back. They were not pacifists. They knew that they need an army, and for the past 15 years they've been through rockets and missiles all the time. They knew we need an army, but they also knew that if they want to go on and live in that region, so they also want the people on the other side to have good life. So there's going to be an option for a good future. So my message is, keep this story out of politics. Those are civilians. My two brothers-in-law were kidnapped from their house in their boxers with no shirt. They were taking barefoot. They made them walk barefoot towards Gaza. This baby that you mentioned before, Kfir Bivas, he was taken when he was 9 months old from the same kibbutz. And on January 18, he celebrated his first year. So a quarter of his life, if he's still alive, and I pray and hope that he's still alive, is under these circumstances. So this is not a political issue, and it has nothing to do with politics. And this is something that I think that we need to mention and focus on it over and over again. And the second thing is that October 7th was a long time ago. In terms of media and press and news, so many things are happening all the time. So if you are starting those conversations and helping us to keep those stories on the top of the media all the time, it helps us a lot, because we're afraid that the world will forget. And they will just turn into those 136 that, who remembers? So those are kind of the two things that we as families ask from you. And of course, if you're related or if you have contacts with the prime minister and presidents of your country, so every pressure and every leverage that can be used to either pressure Qatar or the government of Israel and everything, but this is the political aspect of it. I don't know if you want to open for questions. Unfortunately, they know everything. We try to keep them safe. We didn't mention what happened on the ground. We just told them, and they asked how come they entered if there's a border. We kind of try to keep this thing not clear. But after 3 weeks or 1 month, I think the schools went back to normal. And you know how every kid is bringing what part of the news. In my house, we would never, we never watch TV, so the news is only on the phone, but they have friends who are living in houses with either older siblings or people who are with the news all the time. So unfortunately, they know, and it's terrible because they can tell you, they know most of the people of the kibbutz. This is a small kibbutz, so they know most of the people. So they can tell you about the bivas. And my son plays in a football team with Oad Munder. Oad Munder is a kid, 9 years old. He was visiting his grandma and he was taken hostage. So my kid has 2 uncles and a friend. Luckily, this friend was released, so he plays football with him twice a week. So he get to know more. So unfortunately, I think all the kids in Israel, and this is a huge part of the trauma. I don't even want to use the word post-trauma, because as you said at the beginning, we need to bring them back so we can start thinking about healing process and closing those wounds. Those wounds are still bleeding. So unfortunately, they know too much, and I mean, I think this is why it also has gotten to their nightmares in the past 3 weeks. This is not something that happened before. My kids are going through, they have this therapy. Ariel is going to this therapist. She's doing therapy with animals, which were rescued from those kibbutzim. So they take in also the animals and they're playing with them and doing therapy. And my daughter, she's doing art therapy. But I mean, this is there. They leave the house and they see the posters all around.
As I came into this room, I had questions to you regarding what you feel about the war and going on and the pressure on the terrorists and something like this. But meanwhile, I understand it doesn't matter. Bring them home.
Exactly. And I always say when they ask me, what do you think about this deal or what? I have a master's degree in Jewish education. I don't know. I know that as a society, there's this basic contract between us and the country, and that's it. We need to wake up in the morning. I want to be able to tell my girl once again that everything's okay. She can wake up in the morning and go to school and have normal life, and this is why we need to first bring them back. And yeah, of course, we need to destroy Hamas. This is not a question. I always say that. And I think this is a shared thing between Jews and Christians, that we are nations and religions that are based around the sanctity of life. Life is one of the main values in Judaism and Christianity, even in Islam. And those people of the Hamas, they're sanctified death. And for them, the highest value is killing and dying. So in a way, it's a struggle between those huge values that cannot live together. And I see my mission as the victory of life, just because I want to live in this country and I want to know that we can live in all the countries around the world being safe.
When you're not in a position of, the diplomat or the state maker, you don't have all the information, you don't have all the intelligence, you don't know exactly, what is at stake, what is it that's actually being negotiated. But as a civilian and as a person that leads education and tells young Jewish adults, come to Israel, it's very clear that if this contract, if this promise remains broken, then we have no validity for our life here. And whatever the state needs to do in order to bring them back alive, it must do. And we can't even start thinking about what is the price and how many terrorists for how many hostages. That's not the question. The real question is, how can Israel restore its faith from the citizens? How can it restore the promise that was broken? And the only way to do that is to bring the hostages back.
So these necklaces, I think they call them like a dog tag. But in Israel, it's very famous because when you go into the army, so every soldier gets one, and usually it says your name and your number, like your ID number. And it has two parts, because if, God forbid, someone is falling in a war, so you would break and take the half back so you can say that you know what happened to him. But this is a different one. It says in Hebrew, Alev shelanu shavui be'aza, which is our heart is hostage in Gaza, and then in English, bring them home now. Most of Israelis are working with this all around, and I like to call it the commitment necklace. And I want you to wear this, and I think this is a good reminder. Every time we wake up in the morning, and I don't know, when we take a shower, everything we do, it's there. Every time we sit to eat around the table, it reminds us that our heart is still there with those 136, and I pray and hope and wish that you'd be part of this commitment circle as well. And thank you once again for listening, for praying, for everything. I wish that in the very next future we'll be able to see those amazing images on TV of those Red Cross jeeps coming back with all of them, I hope. Thank you. Thank you so much.